I think we can start now. Well, thank you very much. Welcome everybody to this session of the SciCar conference, which will, please stay careful, be streamed and also recorded for the internet. Before announcing the presentation, I would like to start with a kind of, disclaimer. As you may already conclude from the non-accidental color of my shirt, the following title neither reflects the scientific opinion nor the personal preference or even hope of the SciCar organizers, that is the Science Media Center Germany, the German Science Journalists Association WPK, and the chair of science journalism at TU Dortmund University. My name is Holger Wormer, and I give you now the provocative title of the talk. Today, Trump is winning again the presidency, the prediction of a data-free sociophysics model. But just for a moment, our main interest is not the first part of the title, which probably touches everyone the most, but the question to what extent predictions without data can be made using so-called sociophysics models. This will be explained by Serge Galam. He's a senior scientist emeritus at the Center for Political Science, Sciences Po and CNRS in Paris. And he already attracted the attention with his prediction in the last presidential election, when the data from surveys, as we may see here just in a second, were rather similar to what we have seen a couple of years ago. So you see here the situation today or of yesterday, and you see in these colors here the situation 4 years ago. And this is a kind of déjà vu. The situation seems to be rather similar if you have a look at the opinion polls, but the prediction from the models, which will be presented by Serge Galam, is another one. And I would like to send a warm welcome to Paris. Monsieur Galam, vous avez la parole.
Merci bien. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to present my work. So yes, the title can look provocative, and it's important to. Okay. The main point here is to say, when I say Trump is winning, as you mentioned, it's about prediction from a data-free model, which did predict 2016 victory. But first, what is sociophysics? It's important to say that very quickly, it's the use of concept and technique from statistical physics to describe some political and social behavior. It does not aim at an exact description of reality. The goal is to not to substitute to social science, but to provide an additional counterintuitive vision of social reality.
Pardon, Mr. Galam?
Yes.
Just a question. Can everybody see your presentation? Because I cannot see it at the moment.
Oh.
I can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. And I'm fine with that. Thank you.
So a warning here is to say, of course, it's a very sensitive and hot topic, this election. But here I am developing a hard science approach to social events and political events, which means I am not dealing with a choice being wrong or right or advocating for one candidate or another. The point is to identify if they exist, but this is a claim of sociophysics, that this kind of mechanism exists, which drives the dynamics of opinion between two competing choices, and then to be able to forecast which one will eventually end up above 50%. As you mentioned, this campaign has a taste of déjà vu from all the coverage, all the analysis, and even a little bit more because people were aware of the error which occurred at last election, but yet saying now it's a little more, we are more sure, and saying, of course, there is a little chance that maybe something will happen, but really this time the prediction is Biden will win. So it's how come I come with a different conclusion. My main point is that indeed not much effort has been done in order to understand how Trump did win last election. And if we are the question back 4 years earlier, I myself, again, don't believe in my prediction as it was 4 years ago. However, the main point here is to from the understanding of what happened last year, 4 years ago for last election, from the model and develop it and see what happened for this one. So let me go directly to the model because we don't need to talk too much about the situation, but the main model is I have two choices, A and B, which are competing. So it's Trump or Biden, or it was Clinton or Trump. And then I have two separate mechanisms. One which is external, acting directly on every person with more or less influence or pressure. These are events like the COVID, of course, but also it can be a crisis, it can be something, a crash, a war, media. This is you can take it into account by just making a poll and saying what are the proportion of people after an event, after how this change. What is much less known is the internal mechanism, which is the interaction among people and how this can drive changes of opinion. I consider heterogeneous agent with two kinds of agent. The basic one, I call them floater. These are agents which do have an opinion. They know why they are choosing and making this opinion. However, they may be able to shift opinion if you give them more convincing argument. So they advocate for their own choice, but they are listening to counter choice. And then we have what I call the inflexible or the stubborn or the committed. They also advocate, of course, for their choice, but they will never shift opinion, whatever happens. Now, to model, I start saying I have an initial support from A and B, and I designed by P0 the initial support for A, and this split in two parts. Little a is a proportion of inflexible in support of A, and P0 minus A as a floater. So this P0 minus A are supporting A, opinion A, but they could move to B. And then on the other side, we have the same. So 1 minus P0 for B, which split between little b inflexible and 1 minus P0 minus B floater. Now I turn off the external event and I study the dynamic driven by the interaction among people. These are very informal interaction. And people discuss at dinner, taking a drink, going to work, at a coffee, and they discuss a lot. But it's always in small group and it's informal. Now, during this discussion, on average, some people may change opinion. They can be convinced to change opinion. How it works, this is very complicated cognitive process that we don't understand, of course, how you can convince someone to change opinion, of course, in free debate. So here comes the physicist approach. We make it very, very simple and crude, but yet we expect to capture some reality of the phenomena. I will make the assumption that this very complicated phenomena is equivalent as saying that each agent has one vote in a small group discussing, like it is as if people were voting, and I use a local majority rule. The result of this local majority rule convinces everyone in the group. So this creates a local polarization. However, it does not apply to the stubborn people which don't shift opinion. So if I have a group of 3 persons, 2A, 1B. If the B is floater, after the discussion, he will shift to A. If he is stubborn, he will stay B. However, when we do this simple approximation, this works only when all the time when I have odd size group. But when I consider there are also people discussing in pair or 4 or 6, I can have a tie. And when I have a tie, I have no majority. Now here a physicist will say with atom or this kind of situation, if I have no majority, then nothing happens. I don't do an update because I don't want this to influence the dynamics. However, here we split from physics. Here we are dealing with human, not atom. And then my point is that at a tie, when a group now, by giving all the argument, arrive to a kind of not knowing what to choose because you have as many arguments for A as for B, then this creates a state of doubt in the group, which means that when the group is doubting, rationality of argument cannot make the decision which one should we choose because we have more argument for A or for B. So then when this kind of situation occurs, and all of us have been sometime in this situation, we say both are equivalent. So it is as, okay, we can take A, we can take B. It is as if we are choosing by chance, randomly. We cannot say why we are choosing A or B. We say, okay, we took one of them, like flipping a coin. And here comes my main hypothesis. Is saying that indeed this flipping coin is biased. When we say, okay, we can take A or B, actually now rationality is cut off and it is our irrationality which is going to decide and to be guided by our prejudice, which are spontaneously activated by the issue, which means, say, if you have a group in which people have some sexist prejudice, and you have 2 candidates, a man or a woman, both candidates are equivalent for different reasons. So by chance, up to some time ago, now it changed, but some time ago, they will choose the man. But just saying this was by chance, not because we are sexist, of course, because the 2 are equivalent. Now to account for an heterogeneity of this prejudice, I will decide, and then I will treat, to make things simple here, only group of size 4. So in case of a tie 2A to B, I will go to 4A with probability K and 4B with probability 1 minus K. If K is larger than 50%, means the prejudice are more beneficial to A. If it's less than 50%, it's benefit more to B. Now, how the dynamics work? Agents are randomly distributed in small groups, normally of all kinds of sizes, small size always, as we are in formal discussion, but here I will keep 4, as I say. They are then updated locally in each group, following majority rule, not for inflexible. The inflexible, they vote, but they don't follow the vote in case they are minority. Then we use, in case of a tie, the breaking prejudice. Then agents are reshuffled and they are distributed again in different groups. And we keep on updating this way. So at each update, my proportion, my initial proportion for A, P0, will go to P1, P2, P3. And then the question is, I am getting a kind of stability at some point of this proportion, and more important, can I predict if this P after some number of updates will be above or below 50% when the vote takes place? So now let's go more concrete. Of course, I don't ask you to understand the equation, but this is the main, it's important, I just put it here too, because it's an important element that I have an equation, analytic equation, which accounts for all these elements I have been describing before. And when I keep my group with size 4, it's written here, And then taking this equation, I want to study the dynamic which is driven by this repeating this update using this equation. In order to do it, I have to solve, this is technical, a fixed point equation. And then what I find is this will yield a nonlinear dynamics driven by a tipping point, but not always. This is a very important element. The effect of prejudice and inflexible shares the feature to create a tipping point dynamics. Tipping point dynamics mean that if you start above the tipping point, you are sure to win. If you start below, you will go down by the discussion and you will lose. However, as we will see, the inflexible, they have this peculiarity that they are able in some condition to substitute to the tipping point dynamics a single attractor dynamic. And this is a major difference. Why? Because for a tipping point dynamics, as I just mentioned, you need to know where is the tipping point and you need to know if you are above or below when starts the campaign. If you have only a single attractor, no matter where you start, you don't care, because the dynamics will drive you in any condition to the single attractor. Then what you want to know if this single attractor is above 50% or below 50%. If it's below, you are sure to lose, whatever you do. If it's above, you win, whatever happens. So let's examine how it works. I will first separate the two mechanisms and then we'll put them together in order to understand. This is an illustration of the prejudice effect where I take two extreme cases, k equal to 0 or k equal to 1. You see that when k equal to 0, that the prejudice benefit only to B, then the tipping point for A is at 77%. So this is a dramatic effect because we have a majority collapse. Even if you start from 70% support, you will go down by the informal discussion. On the other hand, if you benefit from the prejudice k equal 1, it's enough to start above 23% in order to go and pass the bar of 50%. So in this case, the instrumental question is really to identify which prejudice will be activated to raise the collective local doubt when a group is discussing and find itself at a tie. We have many prejudices. Some are spontaneously activated, some are frozen. For instance, sexism is a typical one, which some people are openly sexist. So this is what I call a spontaneous activated. And some other people, and this is a good point, more and more people by rationality say, we should not keep on this sexism attitude. So my point is, you cannot get rid of your prejudice. You can freeze it, say, I don't want to be guided by it, but you still have it. And as we will see, Trump 4 years ago was playing on this point. You see why it's so important, the stake of which active prejudice. This is an illustration that if I start always group of size 4, here the tipping point is at 23%. Starting from a minority support of 24, if k equal to 0, I will lose for sure. But if k equal to 1, I will win. So this is very important to know what are these active prejudice and to who they are benefiting. In 2016, Trump has k equal to 0. The spontaneous prejudice was against him because I don't want to go in detail here, but most of them reduced to say he does not fit to the job. That means this guy has nothing to be a president. So even if he started from a high support because he was out of the system, very different, would make him lose and he will lose support. However, he find a way to modify this spontaneous prejudice, as I mentioned before, by actually, this was a paradox, this shocking statement. And it works in two ways. This shocking statement was really infuriating millions of people, and even among his supporters. So when he was making them, he was losing support. However, this is my hypothesis, this emotional reaction against him unfreeze this frozen prejudice, which was connected to the statement. And then he was able, by this way, to turn the prejudice at its benefit. But this worked in two ways, because I will show here. When first the prejudice was playing against him, so this is an illustration from 65% support. Then this will go down because the prejudice, he does not fit to be a president, was against him. Then he make a sexist prejudice. Then he lose down a lot. However, now this has unfrozen the sexist prejudice among many people, and now K is equal to 1, and the discussion will take this very low value up above 50%. However, the condition here is that when this fall down, this new value has to be above the new tipping point. Here, for K equal to 0, this is combination of group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 agent by group. The tipping point was first at 83.7, very high against Trump. When he managed to change K, this go down the tipping point for him at 16.3. And here, the falling was about 16.4, just above. Now, which means that here, when he kept 16.4, it means that you have this percentage of people which are openly sexist. This is not frozen for them. This is an argument. They are not ashamed of it. However, in this case, the same situation. However, the falling took him at 16.2, which is below the tipping point. And then if he has now K equal 1, he will lose. And this is why this mechanism did not work in all swing states. It means you need a core minority, small one, but still there, which make it sure to be above the tipping point. And this did not happen everywhere. Now, let's go to the inflexible effect. So I will first show you what happened when I have only inflexible, so no prejudice. And in order to say no effect of the prejudice, I take K equal half. And this is the equation, but we don't care here, but just to show you that there is an equation. Now, first, to see how it works, I will take one-sided inflexible, which means I have stubborn people only on side A. Of course, this is not the current situation, but just to show. When I have no inflexible at all and no prejudice effect, I have a democratic balance situation where the tipping point is at 50%. The initial majority win the election. Now, when I start to put here 8% of inflexible for A, you see that I break this democratic balance, but not so much. Now, the tipping point, instead of 50%, went down to 44%, which means that A to win need to start above 44 and not 50. But yet, it need to have this quite strong minority. Now, if I go to 16 to 18% of inflexible, now the tipping point go down to 37. So the more A has stubbornness on his side, less initial support it needs to win. This is here a strong illustration. I start from 20% support for A, and I have either 0, 5, 10, 15, 20% of stubborn within this 20%. You see that in all the 4 first cases, nothing happened. But the last one, this 20% will win. And and this you cannot know a priori among the 20% precisely how many inflexible are there. But yet this kind of, we could expect it. But I have an unexpected phenomenon, this is much more stronger. But indeed I found that when I increase the proportion of inflexible, not very high, there exists a critical value here at only 15%, at which I have a breakdown of the tipping point dynamic, because I will have the tipping point and one of the attractors there coalesce and disappear. So you can see it here. This is a situation in which I have 8% inflexible. So I have a tipping point at 44. Now I go to 16% inflexible. And you see the new situation. I have no longer any tipping point. Now I have only one single attractor at 1, which means A, even if it starts at 15, will win. There is nothing B can do. And this is enough to have more than 15% of inflexible on your side. Now let's go to the real situation, and what is happening today is you have inflexible on both sides. So in this case, what is going to matter is the difference between inflexible. I have A for A, B for B, and what matters is X, which is the difference between A and B. If X is positive, which means I have more inflexible for A. If X is negative, I have less inflexible for A, which means more for B. And then this phenomena of disappearing of the tipping point occur here too on each side. And then I have 3 regimes. If X, the difference, now what matters is the difference between the respective proportion of inflexible is between these 2 critical values, I have still a tipping point dynamic. So then if X is positive, the tipping point is less than 50%, but it's non-zero. If X is negative, it's above 50%. But then if X is above this critical value, A will win always, one single attractor. If it's below this value, A will lose always. This is the first scenario illustration where X is between our 2 critical values. I have here 14% inflexible for A, and as X is 2%, which means I have 12% for B. No prejudice effect, dk is equal to 0, which means k is equal to half. And then you see I have a tipping point dynamics at 47, a bit advantage for A, but yet a tipping point, and B can win if it starts from an initial support, which is above the opposite, so 53. Yet a 2% difference in inflexible at the advantage of A give it an advantage of 6% in order to be able on the initial condition to win. But yet it had to be above 47. At 46, A will lose the election. Now this is an illustration of the breakdown of the tipping point dynamics. And then now I have moved here, you see that I have the same situation as before, 14% for A inflexible and 12, tipping point at 47. Now I move to 20% inflexible for A and 18 for B. So I increase both proportion of A and B, but now the difference will be in above this critical value I defined before. And you see that now I have only one single attractor on dynamics at 74. A will win whatever happens. So at the beginning, it will be kind of very low, you don't see it, and then it will start to move a kind of faster. This is why also with respect to the pole in this modeling, what increase reaching the attractor is the number of discussion among people. And the closer we are to the election, and now today it is the election, the more people are discussing. So the dynamic you can see here could be like, 2 or 3 weeks before the election. And then in few days, just before the election, you can move very fast along this line because you have much more, many more updates as I defined them before. So this is the second scenario where A will lose for sure, because you see that now I still have 20% inflexible for A, but now I have 21 for B. So you see that only 1% more difference for B will make the single attractor at 32%. So B will win the election. So let's go, this is important, we arrive to applying the model to the coming election. With respect to prejudice, of course, we could ask, can Trump play again the same game of frozen prejudice by shocking statement he was doing? No. Why? He's still doing shocking statement and absurd comment, but people got used to it. Now people say, okay, one more, but there is no longer any emotional reaction. Say, how can he say such a thing? Because nothing is surprising in what he can say. So this will not work this time. Does it mean that prejudice will not play a role, which will have to keep decay equal to half, to zero? No, because this time it is the spontaneous prejudice which are going to be activated. And indeed, I identify two major ones. And the major one is the fear. And fear is actually developed by both candidates about the consequences of the other guy being elected. The fear of a second mandate by Trump and the fear of a mandate by Biden. So now you see that the difference is that both candidates are competing on the same prejudice, and both can really scare a subpart of the voter about the perspective of having the other candidate to be elected. So this is show that now what is really going to matter is this decay, k minus half, that means who get a little more benefit from the prejudice, and everyone try to get it more by scaring more people about the other one. Another prejudice, I think, which will be activated this time is connected to the COVID and the fact that Trump has been infected and cured of it. And this is going to create in some people, not everyone, the individual attitude standing, facing a danger. That means either to be reckless and say, I go, I don't care, or to be cautious and to say, I have to take precaution. We saw that Trump is the first style, saying, it's not, you have to fight, to no matter. And Biden has been very cautious, wearing masks, say you should not take in risk and be very cautious. So this will play on some category of people. Again, this is not an argument, is in case a group discussing get to a tie, doubting. So this can lead to Trump or Biden. Now, with respect to inflexible, this is a major element on this election with respect to last one. The 4 years of Trump president have polarized the American society at a very, very high level. That means today you have huge proportion of the voter we have millions which are blind Trump supporter, and we have millions which are blind anti-Trump supporter. So this reach a very high level. And then we will measure the effect, and what is going to matter is the difference between this million of stubborn pro-Trump and stubborn anti-Trump. If X is positive, we have more for A. If X is negative, less for A. And this will be the second major key. As for the prejudice effect, both candidates are playing very strongly to galvanize their supporter and to make them more inflexible along their choice. So it is like you want to take rationality out, and then you make your supporter more just go for your candidate, your choice. However, the situation is a little more complex than last time, because now prejudice and inflexible, they can either add to the benefit of the same candidate, but they can also compete. One candidate in a given state can have more inflexible on his side, but the prejudice will be playing more at the benefit of the other candidate, and vice versa. To remind you, so DK is a difference about the 50% prejudice benefit. If it's positive, it favors A. If it's negative, it favors B. X, the difference in proportion of inflexible, positive X favor A, negative X favor B. We have in every state the three different situations. Both effect favor A. Here, the prejudice benefit for A and inflexible for B. Here, the prejudice benefit for B and inflexible for A. And now we are going to see different situations. I first start here to show how it works. I fixed the difference in inflexible. So here I take X is equal to -2%, which means in all these four cases we will go through, always A has 2% less inflexible than B, or B has 2% more. You see, here I have A equal 20%, which means B has 22%. And then I take the prejudice effect. I give here, I kept it fixed also, a benefit for A to only 5%. So DK is equal to 5% in the four cases. Now, let's see first one. 20% benefit for A in inflexible, 22 for B, and a benefit of 55% prejudice for A. We have, in all these cases, one single attractor, which means no matter, this will give the winner. So here the winner is A, because the attractor is at 65%. Now we move here. You see that here the only difference, the proportion of inflexible on both sides has increased from 20%, 5% more. I have now here 25% inflexible A and 27 for B. So I increase both proportions, but keeping fixed the difference. And the prejudice effect stays the same. You see that the single attractor has moved down from 65 to 53. So this indicates that the difference is not the only element playing for the location of the attractor. The level is also important, because here on these two sides, we have the same difference. But here in the second one, more inflexible on both sides. This has reduced the effect of this difference. Now let's see here. Now I have increased another 5% inflexible on each side, which means I have now 30% inflexible for A, 32 for B, always 2%, and the same prejudice. Now I am at the end point, 50%. If I move now to 40%, which is kind of more realistic in the current situation in many states, 40% inflexible A and 42 for B, 5% benefit above the 50% for prejudice. Now A will lose because the attractor is at 49. So we see that indeed we have a weak effect of the prejudice with respect, because here I have like 5% advantage for prejudice for A and only 2% advantage in inflexible for B. So here the effect of prejudice will not compensate the effects in inflexible, while here it does and here it does. Let's see how it's a little more. Now I will fix A and I will vary the difference this time. Before I kept the difference fixed and I increase the general level. Now I keep the value of A inflexible fixed, it's 36%, and I modify the difference. If I start with a 1% difference, which means 36 inflexible for A and 37 for B, and I have a prejudice benefit of 2%, I am here determining what is the prejudice effect necessary to get to balance the inflexible effect. So I want to have an attractor at 50%. So here I need 2% prejudice interest to compensate this 1%. If now I go to 2% more inflexible for B, I need 8% more prejudice for B. So I multiply by 2 here and by 4 here. If I multiply by 3% advantage inflexible for B, I need 11% prejudice more for A to compensate. So we see that indeed the higher is when I have a high support of inflexible, increasing inflexible to be compensated by the prejudice is more complicated. And we can see it in this last illustration. I have 40% inflexible for A, and I will keep here 46 for B. And I want to see what happens when I change the prejudice benefit for A. Here I have 32% advantage for A, and this compensates the 6% advantage inflexible for B. Now, if I go to 40% advantage for prejudice, it does not change the attractor. I need to go to 41 to have a little advantage for A because the attractor has moved to 51. Okay, as time is passing, I have to go to the conclusion. What can we conclude? At last election, Trump found a martingale to win, which could not be applied by Clinton with this frozen prejudice. This time, the winning strategy is the same for each candidate. Unfortunately, it's not very glorious because you need to increase stubbornness and fear of the other side. So it's not really playing on rationality, but this is what the model is showing. So you have to increase the stubbornness of your own supporter and to increase the fear about the other candidate. You have also, with respect to individual facing a danger, to show strength going facing the danger or caution. What we have seen that indeed very tiny difference in this inflexible and fear will make the outcome. So it will be very sensitive. So what can we say about stubbornness? Millions of voters are currently, as I say, blind Trump supporter, blind anti-Trump supporter, and blind Biden supporter. Here I have introduced this difference, and this can make a big effect because I consider that not all blind anti-Trump supporters are automatically blind Biden supporters. And I am having in mind some of the young people which are supporting Sanders, and I don't think that they can see Biden as, going for a more socialist kind of economy. And this can make a difference because a few percent in this X will matter a lot. And also from what I have seen from France, that Trump has been much more involved in meeting and galvanizing his troop. When we see the picture of people jumping and more than 100 of people being very excited, and Trump has been very cautious in the meeting. There are not too many people and very quiet, and so he was not very active in making his people supporter totally stubborn. Prejudice, there is also a little advantage for Trump because the fear of Trump is based on reality. He has been in power for 4 years. So people are fear of what he did and that he will keep doing. However, for Biden, people which think that, he's going to make socialism in America, which is not the case, but some people can think about that. So this play on phantasm, on irrationality. And this, when you go, because of course there were no socialism in America. So this generates more fear usually when it goes to phantasmatic view than from reality. So I think this is going also to give a little advantage in the fear prejudice to Trump. Now, this reckless or cautious facing a danger, I really don't know within the American distribution of character. I am sure that it will play on for different type of people, but I have no idea where we'll go if it's more for Trump or more for Biden. Again, we have to apply this in every state, and mainly in every swing state. So here is my conclusion that, of course, I don't have access to the various precise proportion of inflexible or respective prejudice, but from what I just said before, I can identify little advantage, at least for Trump, which make me conclude that in enough swing state, he will have a positive X and positive decay, which will give him victory. And this is on this rough estimate, which I come to the prediction that Trump will win the election, which is going on today. Two additional mechanisms which will play at Trump benefit on the voting day, which means today. What I call hidden abstention for Biden. I think that many people which are anti-Trump are also anti-Biden, in the sense that they were very, very strongly pro-Sanders, but they cannot say to polls, you know, I will let Trump to be elected, because they are also very anti-Trump. So today, some of them, they will forget to go to vote, and this will be their way to compensate between these two attitudes. So few percent can make a big difference. And another point is the hidden voter for Trump, because you have also in some different social network where the pressure anti-Trump is so strong that if someone would be supporter of Trump, he will not say he supports Trump, he will lie, and he will say he is for Trump. But today it will vote for Trump and not Biden. I am not sure that for Biden there are so many people which are ashamed or don't care to say that they will vote for Biden. So these are two more elements that Trump benefit. Now, before ending the talk, I must emphasize this element. This is very important. That my prediction here is not about taking a risk or becoming a guru. It's about really what is the hard science approach. And this is the way we do. You have to build up model to make prediction, to check the prediction with reality. If the prediction is successful, once more, it will not mean that's it, the model is proved, I have the truth. This means I am on the right direction. And we have to keep on developing the model, making more prediction. And on the other side, if the prediction turn wrong, as like with my emotion, I believe today, it does not mean that the whole model has to be thrown away. It means I missed something and I will need to identify this thing, to put it in the model and see to the next one. This is a way we can build the hard science of social and political event. I think it's a very important element. So it is not a work in progress. We are here in a field in progress. And this is a huge difference to understand how to evaluate this prediction and this work. I just finished a paper which is put on arXiv, which is an archive of physicists, where you can have it is submitted about the model. If you want the detail, the equation, the whole much more development, you can go or send me an email. I will send you a PDF. I mentioned my book on sociophysics, and it's an unusual book. And I try to make it understandable step by step, even if you are not a mathematician or a physicist. And I also try to make it nice, visual, so you can try to either get it or there is an ebook from your library. So I conclude we are all impatient to know if the prediction is right. Of course, we don't care about the reality, but no, this is a joke. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Serge. And I think it was a very interesting insight in your approach, which at least keeps some addition to these ongoing opinion polls with the, well, very often not very successful results. So are there some questions? Volker, the first question is yours, please.
Yeah, hi, Serge.
Hi.
Nice talk. Did you ever attempt to measure in a database way how many inflexibles you have in different competitive states? Because isn't that a parameter you would need to really prove that what you showed, that this is relevant, is kind of relevant in the states where the voting is taking place today, for example, Pennsylvania or whatever. So maybe in California it would have no effect. Did you ever try, or do you say it's not necessary?
No, I did. That means your point is correct. That means if we want to develop the model in a more quantitative way, this is what we will need to do. But my point is that we will need to design kind of different estimation of this stubbornness, because if you ask someone today, as the poll are doing, they're asking, are you sure of your decision? But for me, a voter who say, I am sure of my vote is not an inflexible, because at the moment, this voter is sure. However, tomorrow you can give him another argument, which would say, wow, this is not possible. That means I move to the other candidate. And I don't think that anyone will tell a pollster, I am stubborn, I am totally crazy and I just go this way. So we would need to design specific way to evaluate. And I think it's possible in principle. There is no reason why we could not approach this thing, but this will be for the future. And I cannot do it myself. You need really a lot of means to do that.
And another question concerning the effect of COVID and the pandemic. You were saying you had this argument about fear of the other candidate, but isn't the fear about the COVID pandemic fooling this fear about the candidate? So it's kind of having an impact, at least in my impression. So the fear against Trump is getting bigger because he doesn't care about the health of the population. So this.
You are right. This is one point. However, you have to add another point that almost no one mentioned, that there is also the fear from many more people, I think, who are about the lockdown of economy and the social sufferance of this element. So we are focusing, of course, because this is striking is the number of deaths, which is huge. However, I think that there are also a lot of people, if they are not directly affected by this death, that will be more focused on their economic consequence of the lockdown and the measure that the people who say Trump has a very bad dealing of COVID, that they think, no, this would have been worse if he would have locked down the whole economy and the whole country for 2 or 3 months. And this, no one is putting the focus on the other side. So I don't know how it works, but we have here the two sides. This is why this go along what I was saying, that this election, every camp is playing on the same ground. Fear, COVID, inflexible, but little difference can make the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Maybe some 2 other questions from my side. So the first one is, how strong is the evidence for your basic assumptions concerning prejudice and also the inflexibility? And the second question is, some aspects of your model remind me of an approach in statistics, which is called Bayesian statistics. So where there you have some pre-information and then you combine this pre-information with data that you have or that you could generate. So the second question would be, have you already thought about this approach? So combining your data-free model, as we have announced it, with some data in the sense of Bayesian statistics. And the first one was about the evidence of your basic assumptions.
So the basic evidence of my assumption, it's only through some experience or some reading. For instance, the effect of statu quo effect. This is studied in psychology when you have a group which has to decide for changing a reform proposal, for instance, and if you get the fact that you are not sure, that means the advantage, disadvantage are balanced, then there are evidence that the group will decide to keep what he knows, because why to move to something new if you are not already in theory have defined more advantages. So I focus on this kind of evidence. And the same group, if it has to decide about a new technology or fashion, and then if here too it balanced, then you have a tip to novelty, for instance. So this is a kind of element. And but as for this question and the other one, it would be great to be able in a second step now to really combine with data. My approach is not against data, of course. It's just saying that I think data brings some reality, which is very important, but they will miss some very drastic change, because the data can only give you what they have, what they are. And there are some mechanisms here that, will trigger big move which are not in the current data. If I will look to my curve before a kind of jump, you don't see it in the data. You need the equation to have it. So I think that really, and I agree, we need to, at some point, to combine this approach and the data approach, and then we'll have a very more robust and strong element, for sure. So it's not against, it's another approach, and it has at some point, I hope, to be able to combine with data people.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have just time for one last short question. Franco Zotta posted a question in the chat, or is there somebody else who would like to ask something?
Yeah, well, what do you do if your prediction is right? What will happen?
I know what will happen.
Times. I mean, for your model and the way of looking at the decision.
I think that if the model is right, now what would be nice is to go along what you mentioned, to go in the different state where he won, where he did not won, in the swing one, and see if really now that we know the result and I have my equation, if I can combine what we knew or what was wrong in the actual data, or to be able to have new data going to ask people, afterward, because now they will give different answer once the result is known. So this is very, very important. And if it's wrong, I think it's also the same point to the main point here, as I say, my estimate, a rough estimate of this proportion that I say, here and there on average. So I am not in a position to say in this state, this is what will happen in this one, this one. But this will need more effort and more people working on the topic. It's beyond my capacity, but this will be the thing to do, of course.
Monsieur Galam, merci beaucoup.
Merci à vous de m'avoir écouté.
Thank you very much. And I would like to close this session. And well, all of us will look forward to what will happen in the United States. And another hope that we have that finally, really the voters decide who will be the president and not any judges or something else. So
yes, I agree.
Let's keep our fingers crossed for that. And thank you very much.
Thank you for you. Yes.
Have a nice day, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.